Thank you, Senator Young. Senator Kaine.
Rep. Perriello, it's really good to see you. Very good to see you. Along with others on this committee, I began advocating for the creation of this special envoy position quite a while ago because the magnitude of this challenge, including the fact that the world isn't paying sufficient attention to it, demonstrated that we really needed to up our game and devote more resources to being a part of the solution. I was so happy when finally the administration decided to create this position, and the fact that you, a longtime friend with deep background in the region and an expertise to be able to do this work with distinction, were nominated for it and put into the role is something I'm very gratified by. And I know I speak for many of my colleagues, and certainly Senator Warner, who also advocated for the creation of this position. I've got a couple of questions for you. The questions my colleagues have asked, I think, have done a good job of framing out the challenge. I want to make sure you have the resources to do the job that you need to do. But before I get there, just an observation. As you know, Virginia has a pretty significant diaspora community from Sudan. And we have a diaspora community from a number of African nations because 1 out of 8 of us now is born in another country. One of the things I've noticed in the past in interacting with diaspora communities, and I'll use Ethiopia as an example, our diaspora here have different points of view. Some are sympathetic to the central government, some are more sympathetic to the Tigray region's leaders. So it's not uncommon within a diaspora community to find divided opinions. Within the Sudanese diaspora in Virginia, I've not found divided opinions. I've found among the Sudanese, as you point out, there was a belief that they had negotiated a path forward and that they believe both the ASF and the RSF are hijacking that path. And it's interesting to walk into a meeting of a diaspora community and not have an internal tension about who they support. They would very much support a process as you describe. And it's a very difficult thing, but it's nice to know that at least here at the home front, the diaspora community here with deep ties in Sudan are really on board with the vision that you and the administration have outlined. It's said here in D.C. that personnel make policy, and we pressed hard for this envoy position. Glad to learn, as I said, that you were Secretary Blinken's candidate, and I think you're the right one. Do you have what you need, both in terms of personnel and resources, to fulfill this very challenging mandate? And could you describe the makeup of the team that you're working with?
Thanks, Senator. And I do feel like I have had tremendous support from the State Department and the interagency all the way up to the Secretary. And I want to come back to that. But on your diaspora point, I think it's really important to underline what you've said. Because I think we see the same thing with Sudanese civilians across the region, many of whom are spread across Nairobi, Kampala, Chad, et cetera. This won't surprise any of you, but if you just look at Twitter and Facebook, you would think that people are very divided on certain political questions. But in fact, when you actually talk to people, and the polls show this as well, there is incredible consensus among the Sudanese people about wanting an end to the war and wanting a restoration of the arc that they had finally had that was hopeful. And I think even on some of the additional questions about things like not wanting to see the backdoor to power from former corrupt officials or Islamic extremists, again, they're very interesting and important questions that will take years for the Sudanese to decide and to debate, much like we have many in our own country. And that's the right thing to happen in a democracy that they hope to have. So there are questions that are quite vibrant discussions, but there's not disagreement on this core question about ending the war, returning to a civilian transition, and having an integrated professional military under SAF, bringing in not just the RSF, but the various JPA signatories into that process. They want to be proud of their military like we are. They want the reforms and things that will get there. Some of those things will take years to happen, just like it took years to set up the Joint Command here. Mm-hmm. But again, I think we've seen that in the diaspora, and I want to give a particular acknowledgement, which again won't surprise you from your work, that this consensus has been particularly strong and particularly powerful among Sudanese women. We've seen this through various alliances around the region and inside. It's been such an important part of the resistance committees that helped bring Bashir down and that have helped to shield communities from harm during these atrocious circumstances. I've seen it in my organizing meetings around the region. Not only the group that is most likely to show up on time with an agenda and action steps ready is definitely going to be the alliances. We had a wonderful event here with Vital Voices that Linda Thomas Greenfield joined that had a number of very powerful Sudanese women speaking out on this experience. And of course, this is in no small part because women and girls have borne the brunt of many of the atrocities, certainly the horrific and systematic use of rape as a weapon of war, but also the issues of famine and starvation and displacement. So we do believe the diaspora in this case has a very important and constructive role to play. It also goes back to Senator Young's point and others about needing that to be a community that wants to return to Sudan, whether full-time or being investing there, whether that's investing their human capital or their other capital. And I think people do stand ready to build that future Sudan in this case. So I'm proud of how many we have in Virginia of people from Sudan, but also it is something where we've got a broader voice here that needs to be amplified and that we can try to center in these conversations. And I think that's an important message I've had to both our Saudi hosts and others about the talks, which is the baseline for the negotiations need to be what the Sudanese people have already stated as the framework.
I want the chairman to be able to ask questions. Can you just give me a very quick answer on, do you have the resources you need to fulfill your mandate?
We do. I mean, we have, posts have been incredible. As you know, I'm traveling almost every day, and that's a lot of work for an underfunded department. People have been wonderful. I think that there's some mid to over the horizon questions we can talk about, whether it's Special Envoy's office or Sudan more generally, of what we should be ready for in a case of further deterioration or a breakthrough. But I've been very appreciative of the welcome at State and the Secretary's willingness to engage directly on this issue at the highest levels with some of the key actors.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.